So I wanted to start with a story. This is resilience. What a great topic. It's a lovely topic. It's Bob was talking about what's your vision, what's your calling. I'd say this is it. This idea of resilience is my calling. And so I want to start with a story of how I got there a little bit. I'm your typical, probably young American, or I was young American child when I was born, growing up in a family that didn't go to church but believed in God. My dad taught me to pray my bedtime prayers at night, and so I knew that there was this bigger being, this bigger God. But I was the baby of a family of 5, and my 4 older siblings all didn't live with us except for the one that was closest to me. There's a lot of age difference. And I'm a feeler, so I can feel. I didn't understand this at the time, but I feel other people's feelings. I have high empathy and a high discernment. And so I grew up feeling a lot of things that I didn't understand. Do you guys know what I mean? Like I could feel tension, or I could feel things, and I just would like cry or get upset or react or internalize it, which was the hard part, and think that I did something wrong. And so I grew up constantly wanting to do the right thing. I wanted to be a good girl. And I think to some degree, my goal as a young child was to be the good one out of the 5 of us. So I'm like, but remember me, I'm the good one. And, when you're the baby, you get the advantage of the others making mistakes first. So you can think that you're the good one. When I was 12 years old, or 11 years old, we moved to Florida. And I was a latchkey kid, which is a term back in the 80s or 90s, which meant my parents were at work and I came home and opened the door from school and took care of myself for a few hours. And I decided to ride my bike, and I went for a ride, and I had a bicycle accident and I broke my collarbone. And I was coming back, so I've got a mangled bike, and I'm like taking I didn't know I broke anything except my arm hurt. So my arm hurts, and I'm coming back with this bike, and I get home, and we had just moved to this town, and my mom had just gotten home from work. My dad was still in another state trying to sell our other house, and my mom was really stressed. I didn't know that, except that she yelled at me for getting hurt. And she was mad because she didn't know where the hospital was, and she didn't know what to do. But all I knew is I'm in pain and my mom's yelling at me. And her sister was with us during this transition, her older sister, and she was more compassionate and kind of corrected my mom, but then they both took me to the hospital, and we were in the military, so it was a military hospital. And there were doctors who were practicing, so they set my arm wrong the first time and then set it right. And it was just a lot of pain. And so I was crying and really upset. And I got home, and the day after I got home, a pastor came to visit us that we had visited their church. So my aunt, who was staying with us, was a Christian and a churchgoer. And so she had basically made my mom and I go to church with her the Sunday before. And that Sunday, this pastor came, and he said to me, do you believe in Jesus? And I was like, of course, everybody does. And he explained what it was going to be like when I became new, what a new creature was. And he gave me this penny. And it was in that moment when I prayed with him that I felt something different. And things started to change, except the thing that didn't change, that stuck with me, was this desire to be good. I still wanted to be the good girl. And so I now was just the good girl, good Christian, that I wanted to be for God. Do you know what I mean? So I kept working for God's love. I didn't know I was doing that, but that's what I was doing. Every good work, every good thing through, this is seventh, eighth grade. So I'm 12, 13, 14 years old. Everything in college was towards this end. And I did a lot of good things. I learned a lot of Bible verses. I genuinely loved God, but I was working for love, which caused me to have a lot of anxiety because I could never be good enough. And there's something inside of me that I knew I could never do enough. And I went off to college, to a Christian college. And when I was about 17 and a half, 18 years old, I got into a really big fight with a friend. I don't know if you've ever had like a friend where you feel like you broke up, like it's just an end to relationship. And it cut me to this core of like, why am I not good enough? What is wrong with me? I don't know if you've ever heard that phrase in your head. What's wrong with me? You've asked that question. What's wrong with me? That's Satan, by the way. And I didn't know that I was in this cycle, and it's called the fear, shame, control cycle. So I was ashamed. I felt shame. And because I felt shame, I would become afraid I wasn't good enough, afraid I couldn't do enough. And then I would want to gain control of myself and others, and I would exercise it in whatever way was there. And I took that with me. I'm telling you that story because I took that, even though I loved Jesus, he loved me, I had a personal relationship with him. If I would have died, I fully believe I would have gone to heaven. But I took that with me on the mission field. So fast forward like 10 plus years, I didn't move until I was 32 to Africa, which means I'm a lot older than I look right now. So there you go. I moved to the mission field, and I'm still trying to be good. And I had gone through a lot of healing, and I've repentance and forgiveness and thoughts of that, and I had dealt with some past things of my life, but I still was trying to be good. And the second year that I was on the mission field, I started getting really angry. In fact, it was not anger, it was rage, where something would happen and I would snap. I don't know if maybe I'm the only person that's ever done this. I hope not. I would snap and I would scare myself. I would act so angrily that it scared me. It was like my emotions were coming out the side. I had no control over them. And I started repenting and reading and trying to reach out to people. Skype was new then, this whole thing. You had to people were like, how do I download this thing called Skype? And I cried a lot. One night, I woke up in the middle of the night and I thought I was having a heart attack. My heart was pounding and I'm like, that's it, I'm about to die. I didn't have a heart attack, but I went to the doctor, and her name was Charlene, oddly enough, this Afrikaans doctor. I lived in South Africa. I was a missionary in South Africa. And she said, I think you had an anxiety attack. And I was like, no, I don't have anxiety. I'm a Christian. I can't have anxiety. I know the end. Jesus wins. He loves me. I had all the right things. And she said, what's happening at work? She knew that I worked at, it was called Mount Everest. The term missionary, what does that mean? You're a volunteer. How is it? And again, remember, I feel things that were happening. And there were things that were happening at my base that I didn't know of. I worked for friends, and the leaders were actually having an affair. I didn't know that at the time. I just knew that something was happening, and I felt all this anxiety all the time, and I wasn't good enough. I couldn't fix it. I couldn't solve the problems. And so that kind of, she gave me a medication, which I was really scared to take. I had been taught that medication wasn't godly, basically. And I thought, oh man, I'm just gonna like all the worst stories of any kind of psychiatric medication you've ever taught. And it was a really mild, I don't even remember what it was. She said, just for a week, take this, and then you're not allowed, here's a note, you're not allowed to work for 1 week. And I lived, you know, as a missionary, I lived on a compound with other people. My whole job was like, what am I gonna do for a week? So I go and I tell my boss that I can't work. And we were about to have mission teams come in. I ran an internship. There was all that was going into our summer months. It was so busy. And I just stopped everything for a whole week. And I spent a lot of time walking and a lot of time in silence. And there was nobody that could solve my problem, even me. And the thing that really revived me was not reading more scripture, not doing anything, but sitting with myself and being kind to myself. I had to forgive myself and let myself off the hook. And all those years of trying to be good and memorizing all that scripture was super helpful now, because the Lord began to speak through, and I started to distinguish the difference slightly between God's voice and Satan's voice. And I finally stopped listening and thinking that the internal thing that was telling me that I was failing was the right thing. And it was a choice at first, and to amplify what God was saying and to minimize what Satan was saying. Instead of going and trying to fix it, I wanted to get that out, like root it up, weed the garden, and I'll just go dig it out and pull it. But that wasn't the solution. The solution was to be flooded with the presence of God. It is, love covers a multitude of sins. And I heard the Lord say, and when I say that, right, it wasn't audible. It was this impression. It was this inner voice that said, Charlene, what if my love is enough? What if there's nothing that you can do? And I prayed this as we started. There's nothing that you can do to make me love you anymore. And there's nothing you can do that would make me love you any less. My love is full right now. Be filled with that. What if you flood your body with my presence, and it would flood out all of the other stuff? And I thought, well, that seems too simple, because I've been wanting to make things complicated. And so what I would say to you today, and we're gonna quickly give you a chance to talk back to this, but is resilience is that idea of flooding out and allowing the Lord to do the work. You are going to be sad. You're going to be frustrated. It's the same things that you guys have already experienced, you'll experience again. We're not perfect. We're human beings, not human doings. And so the reason why we want to focus on this part of care is because this is what the Lord does the work. So we don't have to measure that. We don't have to look at that. It's how do we help each other be resilient and bounce back. I didn't really mean to do that. That wasn't the plan today. But I felt like right during the break that the Lord wanted me to share that little story with you. Before we move on, Any questions? Thoughts?
I would like to tell you, thank you for being that honest and vulnerable. I know that this is not an easy thing, and being open to people, sometimes open a door to be hurt too, but I could really rely on too many things that relate to many things that you said. And it is amazing to share that kind of experience, even the painful one and the lessons are out of it.
Thank you. How much time do I have? What's my time limit? Let's see. I got till 12:20. Okay, so let's do this. I'm gonna share my screen real quick. None of my slides really are gonna work. We're pivoting a little bit here, but I even had a slide. South Africa. Let's see. Let's look at this. Let's take a minute and look at this question. What is resilience? Hold on. So if you have a piece of paper and a pencil or a pen or on your device or something, if you could take a moment and just make a couple of notes. What is resilience? What would you say it is? It doesn't have to be the definition. What does it look like to you? What does it mean to you? And when you're done, just look up so I know. If we could go ahead and drop that link in the chat, I'm going to explain how to use it in just a minute, Becky. What we're going to do is, one of my other side jobs is I do leadership development. And one of the tools that we've learned that is super helpful based on research with dialogue is to engage our brain with an image. So I'm going to show you something that I'd like us to do. I'm going to show you what it looks like. So you're going to get a chance to select an image, and you're going to look through a bunch of images, and sometimes it'll just feel like it selects you. Once you find one, it'll look something like this. You'll see a bunch of images, but you'll see one, and this one I selected is in that group, and it's number 43. So you can see that's number 43. That's important when you're talking about it. Hold on. Did I share my screen? I didn't. Okay.
You stopped.
Okay, hold on. Let me try it again. Sometimes the share thing. All right. There we go. Can you see it now? There you go. So here's the image. What I'd like you to do is you're going to be in a group with one other person or three, depending on the group. And you look at the picture and you first want to slow your mind down and just describe what you see in the picture. So I see a train track, and I see two people on the track. I see a river. I keep focusing actually on the wood, the dark wood, the beginning of the track, and kind of the light there. Emily, what else do you see?
I see bare trees
Hmm.
and a boy pointing out something he sees in the distance. See a reflection on the water.
So what you're going to do is after you describe what you see, you're going to offer up to who you're talking to see what they see. This is a great exercise because my mind didn't go to those things directly until Emily brought it up. So it brought out more in this picture. And then after your partner tells you what they see, then start to describe why this helps answer your question. So when I picked this, I was picking it with the thought in mind of what I thought about resilience. I picked it because the train track, like resilience is staying on track. It's continuing to go. It's like the chugga, 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 chugga. Like you get back up and you go, and then you can describe it a little more, whatever comes to mind, whatever dialogue comes to mind. And then I would say to Emily, what do you think? Is there anything that you would add to that off the top of your mind?
I think resilience means sometimes you might look dead, but you're coming back. There's seasons of it.
Seasons. Yeah, that's really good. So this is a tool for dialogue, and that's basically what it is. So once one person shares theirs, then the other person would repeat that the exact same way. All right. So I'm going to stop sharing. You should see in the chat box, we're going to see how this works. There's two things that I've done. This is also on the Facebook page. I had mentioned only like 30 minutes before things started to download it. But try to click in the chat on that link and let me know if you're able to, like if you are able to pull up pictures, give me a thumbs up. I would love if someone wanted to share with us a little bit from their conversation, either what they heard themselves say about resilience. Actually, even before that, what did you think about that exercise? Using the picture. Yeah, Fernando?
I just think that it helps a lot for you to see things that you don't see at first. So somebody else just come and and show you a different perspective. So in terms of, working in groups, it's way better because others can see what you cannot.
Yeah. It is a great tool for dialogue. There is just a side note, there's a thing that says that if you put something in the middle, it's easier to talk to that thing. More things come out from people in terms of a conversation if there's anything in between the two people. So like literally, so as you can use anything, images of any kind. It really helps. And then it's the stopping, writing with your cognitive brain. It's not really left and right, so I'm trying to get out of that habit. But your cognitive brain and your more creative side of your brain is with the pictures. So what did you hear? What was a part of your conversation that you heard your friend say, or you say, or a picture? Share with us for a minute before I hand it over. Yeah.
Okay, I can start. So I was in a group with Catherine. It was very interesting for me that we both chose pictures related to nature. And however, we chose different pictures, and each of us thought about the picture of the other, but we didn't choose that. We chose the other one. And it was very interesting that I could see, for example, what is in the picture visually, but she could see different objects, many of them, but she could see the small details, like a web on the fence. I couldn't see this, or the movement, like one of the horses is actually eating grass instead of just two horses and their colors. And it was interesting for me also when she chose a very interesting mountainous picture that she could see many things on it, but she made me feel or she made me think about the different layers. And it was like this turning the roles, switching the roles.
Switching the roles. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, Draghi.
From our conversation with Alex and Fernando, I find out that we are so different, both three of us. And we see on the things so differently, which is so good. Fernando chose the picture with a man trying to catch from one point to another point, like a running and shadow down. And Alex chose like a picture with books. And he shared that when he is in some difficulties, he finds resilience in books, because books never change. Everything what's inside is inside. And I choose picture number 6, I think, with the nature. With, let me see, just picture number 6, yes. And I choose this picture because right, before, actually, like a couple of weeks ago, actually not a couple of weeks ago, but months ago, I'm like in a transition moment from one to another organization. And it was very, not just emotional, but with a lot of pain as well, because a lot of relationships and a lot of things you have gained. And so, and where I find like a resilience was nature and sunsets. And on this picture, I actually have like a sunsets, because for me sunset is so deep, make me to feel peaceful, calm, and to just observe, meditate, and calming. So, and nature, because I like hiking, but just by myself. I don't like company on hiking.
That's awesome.
I like to be with myself.
It's good to like to be with yourself.
Yes, to relax myself.
That is a really good point, Draghi, that I'll wrap with, and that is what feeds you it may look different than somebody else, in terms of resilience and bouncing back, the ability to bounce back from overwhelm. And I would say there's 2 things that I put in the Facebook group that you guys can look at later as resources. There's many resources or things, but one of those I put in there is something called the Joyful Journey, and it is a guided journaling exercise out of a book called The Joyful Journey. And it takes you through this idea of eyesight, or putting yourself in the position of kind of writing and flowing with the Lord in terms of journaling, very specifically through and connecting, because He is the one who sees us, hears us, and we need to feel understood and connected. Alone and with the Lord first. We're never alone, really, which is really wonderful. And then the other thing is just something that I created for myself when I have a moment of overwhelm or anxiety. It's 4 steps that I created that I do. And over and over and over again, it has helped me come back. And so just to the Lord, and to recenter basically on the fact that it's not about me, it's about Him. I think the question came up over prayer with Leanna, and that question of how do you know, when you've got these things that you need to do, these tactical things, like I need money, like I need to, these prayer partners are good, but I also need financial partners. And I think it's this just polarity of constantly realizing that we surrender to the Lord, and that I pray and I obey is something Youngie Cho said. What's your strategy for church growth? I pray and I obey. What's your strategy for whatever? I pray and I obey. So I think that would be my encouragement as you guys go on, is to just take a deep breath and let God have it.